Hi, my name's Anthony Wilson, and welcome to another Crabs, Goats, and Goats. I'm really excited today because I have with me Jason Fleming, otherwise known as Sagittarian Mind, from Twitter and his own consultations and blogs and all his other astrological work. Real pleasure and privilege to have him with me today. Welcome, Jason. How are you doing?
I'm good. I'm good. Thank you. I appreciate you having me on. It feels good to be here. Definitely.
Okay, good. So, first of all, let's just have a look at your development as an astrologer. So, I think you went professional around the time of like 2009, something like that.
That is correct. Yes. I actually celebrated my business is a Cancer Sun, Cancer Moon. Actually, Cancer Sun, Cancer
Wow.
Moon, Sag rising. I'm a Sagittarius Sun, Cancer Moon, Sag rising.
Wow. It's just inversion of you. Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. Interesting. So as of the end of June, June 23rd, I've been 12 years as a professional astrologer.
Okay. And in that time, you said, I saw you speaking recently where you said that your business in the last couple of years kind of rocketed, like a lot more interest, a lot more people coming to you.
Yes, yes. I believe one of those things was probably COVID, you know, um, because I think people were searching, have been searching for a lot of meaning in terms of what's actually going on in their life. Or, during the first part of that period, people were basically, they couldn't go anywhere.
Hmm.
So they had to stay inside. They were restricted to their home, which probably gave them a lot more time for introspection to try to figure out exactly what's happening in their own lives.
Sure, sure. And people are saying now that there's a big explosion of interest in astrology,
Hmm.
uh, especially in the US, I think. I don't know how much I notice it in Europe, but in the
Hmm.
US, do you think that's true?
I think it's just becoming more visible and mainstream, and I think part of that is, I mean, not that it has never been in music, right? But part of it is the mediums through which it comes. People are mentioning it more in a commonplace way, so it becomes more normalized, I think.
I remember
But
when
also,
I was in the metro in the subway in New York, and I heard people talking about it in Brooklyn on the train. Like they were
Mhm.
saying, "What's your sign?" Oh, Scorpios. I was like, "Wow,
Right.
I would not hear this in England like that."
Yeah, it's interesting. And I think that also just generally as a society, we might now be more open to other methods of addressing issues in our lives besides the formalized and standardized ones, right? We might
Right.
find that there's some value in looking outside of the box.
Yeah. Yeah. I can see that coming through now. Definitely. I also think it's because people have access to their chart now very rapidly. You know,
Sure, sure.
and they're not just confined to their sun sign anymore. They can find out what all the rest of it means, and a lot of people are very curious about it, I think.
Absolutely. And then when you have people who are prominent um, start talking about it, I think that does something too for people who seem to follow or even look up to those particular people.
Sure.
Because people have mass influence, and people tend to, gravitate toward that.
Hmm. um, your persona as an astrologer on Twitter always interests me because you seem to be able to be friends with everyone. Like you don't get into beefs, or you don't argue about house systems or about politics or anything like that. I mean, is that something that sometimes tempts you to get into? No, no, I can't be doing that.
No, I mean, I have my observations, and I think more so it is just, I guess haven't necessarily seen what a constructive result of all that would be. So I have my
Right,
observations, I have my own thoughts, but at the end, I'm asking really what for.
right.
Uh, so that's really the thing. That can, because debating or arguing with people on the internet can take a lot of time and energy.
Exactly, and energy, right?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And and you could argue that neither person probably at the end of that has changed their view
Of course.
or been open to any new information or what have you. And that's actually probably a very unsagittarian thing.
Right.
When you think about it, to be that way, but literally, I don't really. I would rather spend my energy in other ways.
So how is that working then? If that's not a Sagittarian way, what do you think it's like the total resistance of it from your point of view, not getting into it is the best policy in that sense? Because if you get into it, you might not stop, maybe. I don't know.
Well, that's what I was, because what I would consider to be the Sagittarian way is to engage in all that and be, convincing, trying to convince and convert, right? Trying to sway people over to your point of view, or becoming very dogmatic about what it is that you're saying, right? And I think that I've already been there in my own life and seen how that works. So I think I'm at a comfortable point now that I don't have to get back into it.
Yeah, I mean, I have Venus and Mars in Sagittarius, and Mars is very close to my Sun in Capricorn, and I can't resist it. I mean, I just can't resist it. I get on something and I'm like, no, I'm pushing this. This is wrong, But I always like the way that you extend yourself for people, and people really love you for that, I think. I mean, I get a really good positive vibe from other people always saying good things about you on Twitter.
Well,
and it's been quite good for you, actually.
Feel good. Yeah, that makes me feel good. I mean, I feel like that, astrology is just something that everyone can benefit from. And I think it's something that brings people together more than divides them apart. I just try to remain fair and objective about everyone and every sign and everything else and who we're talking to, because we all have it in our chart and it's all just part of the general human experience that we're all in together. So we might as well try to, learn about each other and, and experience that together.
Right. And you draw your boundaries very carefully. Like, well, I'm not going to do any free interpretation here. This is my job. It's my business.
That's been learned over the years, essentially, because probably joined Twitter maybe 11 years ago. And there's may have been a handful of astrologers, and we pretty much talked amongst ourselves. And then, with the writing and everything, you start providing more information. And then the more you provide, sometimes the more people want. And, if you'll exhaust yourself if you don't draw those boundaries. I have Saturn in the 7th, so that's pretty easy for me.
Yeah, me too. I have Saturn 7 in Capricorn.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah.
So my Moon and Saturn are really powerful. Everything else, not so much. But yeah. Let's talk about the sign of Cancer. We're in Cancer season. We've got another 7 or 8 days left of Cancer season. So your moon's in Cancer. My moon's also in Cancer. I have an ascendant also Cancer. People, I keep seeing on Twitter, Cancer men are crybabies. Like what can we say in favor of the sign at this point? Because I do feel like it gets a bad rap.
Yeah, well, absolutely. And listen, if you ever just type in Sagittarius men, that's 2 for 0 for 2 for me. So, but I mean, what we can say is that there's a connection to one's emotional world. Definitely nothing wrong with being in touch with one's feelings. That helps us to to be more human and to have that emotional intelligence, the kind that you can't necessarily quantify, is a huge asset. And it just helps you in relating to yourself, understanding how you feel, relating to other people, being able to hold space for other people. That's a huge Cancer thing. Support, right? And, just in this profession, what I realize is that there are many people who have many things that are weighing heavily on them, and they literally have no one to talk to, in their life about these things. And so it's very valuable to be able to find someone who will listen unconditionally and hold space in a non-judgmental way, and to form a connection emotionally. And that is all something that is, infused in Cancerian energy,
right?
In my opinion.
Yeah. I mean, it's a sign that is totally there for you. Once that bond is there,
Mm-hmm.
they will go the extra mile if they care about you. You're part of the family in a sense.
Absolutely.
There is the other side of Cancer when you're not part of the family. Like,
Right. Clannish is a word that is what, typically used, right? Because it's like outsiders. You are definitely an outsider,
right.
if you're not part of the family. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and I feel like it's a trust and security issues, right? Because one of the things Cancer also wants is a safe space. Not only can they provide a safe space, but also that's necessary for them to operate with maximum effectiveness. Because the hard shell on the outside of the crab, right? The softness is underneath.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to peel that back, or really you don't peel it back. They reveal it in time based
Mm-hmm.
upon trust.
Yeah, and actually, with the water signs, this is the thing about masculinity that I've always found is that it's hard if you're raised in a very traditional family as a water sign, like Pisces or Cancer, particularly, all this sensitivity,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And how can I show this without somehow not being a typical man, without being the man, if you like?
Well, just
Um,
anger being the only appropriate. It seems like anger is the only thing that people understand
right,
where men are concerned.
right,
So it's difficult, like you said, because the cosmos is asking you to do something totally contrary to what society is expecting.
exactly.
Yeah.
I've seen this particularly with Pisces men, where they struggle with that sensitivity sometimes to really just show it, you know.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And Cancer, like you say, has this shell, so sometimes they can cover up how much they're really feeling.
Mm-hmm.
Um, uh, the what I was saying about when you're not part of the family anymore, if you cross a Cancer that's very close to you,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
the levels of grudge.
Oh, absolutely. The memory. Well, and the thing is that with Cancer, they may not be able to tell you like on July 15th, 2021, this happened, as far as the data is concerned, but they understand how whatever you did made them feel
Right.
forever, basically.
Mm-hmm.
So whenever you're back trying to deal with that person, it's always that memory, that emotional memory is forever,
Mm-hmm.
right? I mean, there's so
And what signs were your parents? Just out of curiosity, when you were being raised.
my father's a double Virgo. My
Right.
father's a Virgo sun and Virgo moon and Capricorn rising.
Oh
So
wow.
yeah, he's triple Earth. My mother is a Leo sun, Scorpio moon.
Oh, okay. Very different.
Yeah, absolutely. They've been married for 52 years.
Wow.
It's, it's
Fantastic. Okay. Right. So let's now talk about the subject. One of the subjects why I wanted to talk to you is you write a lot about hip hop in your blog. I mentioned
Mhm,
it on Twitter
mhm.
a fair amount. And sometimes I've noticed when I get up, because we're in Europe, we're like 5, 6 hours ahead of you here. And then
Right.
I'll get up on Saturday morning and I'll see you posting tunes at like just before I'm getting up. But like you're up at like 3 o'clock in the morning on a Friday night, posting EMD
Right.
tunes or something like that on your Twitter, which is the kind of clue to when you were really musically involved. And tell us a bit about that, how hip hop was involved when you were growing up, and what it means to you.
What it means to me. I always viewed it as the creativity that's involved in it, and also as an educational and an instructive tool, right? For me, it was never just a bunch of noise, but that's because I'm what I would consider to be a lyrical person, right? A fan of lyrics, of actually listening to the music, and then also just a fan of music in general, which things like sampling and the way the producers would make the beats and what they used and everything like that was always something that had been of interest to me. And it really clicked when I remember I walked into a, Borders, which is a chain that went out of business, bookstore chain here in the US. And I remember seeing this CD, and it had it was a CD, and it said like music for your signs, right? It was music for your signs, but it was like rock and and everything else. And so I said, wow, why don't they have one of these for hip hop, right? Like you could do the same thing. And the thing is that in hip hop, someone is always talking, right? So they're essentially speaking, let's say in a representative way. There's a lot of things that people say that are very much indicative of specific astrological energies at work, right? Or even speaking things in a better way than I could write an interpretation astrologically sometimes, right? Yeah, I mean, so it's like they don't know that that's what they've said, but this is essentially what they've said. So what I ended up doing is like starting to think about astrological interpretations and thinking about certain lyrics that match those interpretations, right?
I mean, no, I mean, hip hop lyrically is about society and community. The things that people are writing about are things that affect everybody around them in a sense. And this is where it's kind of different to the rock tradition, and which is often very personal. It's often about a personal story. I mean, not that hip hop isn't like that, but it's so much richness in the lyrics of hip hop in terms of learning. I mean, just from me growing up in Northern England, listening to like Public Enemy, Run DMC, EPMD in the 80s, I'm like learning about society, at the same time as hearing this amazing like primal music. I mean, for me, it was like incredible that era. Really, it was amazing.
And it's still, and it's got entertainment value as well as educational value, and that's what really kept on exciting me about it, right? I mean, even when people would be in competition with one another, right? And I'm probably talking backwards, like in the past, but some of the battles and everything really excited me in terms of it bringing out the best in everybody. You're seeing that someone taking their competition to another, their game to another level, just because someone had confronted them on something, then them going back and forth with things, right? And this was like things that did not lead to like violence and those kind of things also, which would be considered to be some of the more problematic or challenging aspects where hip hop is concerned.
I mean, is there an element of Mars there in hip hop, do you think, in terms of this competitive, pushing yourself, assertiveness kind of idea? I mean, the positive idea as Mars, as well as having some of the negative things in there as well.
Absolutely, because it just, as you alluded to, when you were talking about cancer, right? This would be something that would be very challenging, right? For someone to confront someone and be in a battle and tell the person, you might have hurt my feelings when when you said X, Y, and Z, right? It's like you have to be, it's bravado when it comes to people battling one another. Yeah. Right. It's not necessarily let me tell you like how I'm feeling inside. Right.
Yeah.
So that's, again, that would be a challenging aspect to it.
How old were you when Rebel Without a Pause by Public Enemy came out?
Was that 87?
87.
I was 15.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. I can't imagine what that was like in New York to be 15 when Rebel. I can't imagine.
Well, there's just so many. What's interesting is because I grew up in Indiana. I lived in Indiana until I was 13 years old, and so the only access that I had, like, nothing was around that was hip hop related at all. So there was in the city that I lived. There was a college. It was called Terre Haute, Indiana, a city that I was living in, and so they had a school there, Indiana State University. So from 8 to midnight, WISU was the radio station that would have the college radio, and that's where they would play all the hip hop, and that's where I started to hear everything just in that period of time. And then I said, "Oh, who is that?" And then I tried to go to the mall or go somewhere and try to get the music, right? But that's where I would first start hearing things like Curtis Blow, basketball, early Boogie Down Productions, all that different stuff was broadcast in that specific time period,
Wow.
on the weekends. Yeah.
Yeah, so I was DJing in clubs in Sheffield in Northern England when all that stuff came out. And when they first I was at a rave and they put Rebel Without a Pause on at the end of the night. And this was a rave which attracted all kinds of people, but also like merged dance music styles with house, hip hop, soul, funk.
Mm-hmm.
But they'd have like so they'd have like hip hop slots for like 15, 20 minutes. And then at the end of the night, they put on Rebel Without a Pause and just looped it and played it for like 20 minutes.
Wow.
And the place just went crazy. It was one of those memories from the 80s that I'll just never forget. Anyway, so you looked at on your blog a chart for what you've termed as the birth of hip hop. So let's have a look at that together now. So let me try and share my. Are you seeing that?
Yes.
Right. Okay. So this is a chart this is Kool Herc, right? When he put the hip hop party.
Yeah. The flyer said 9 o'clock. That's what I went by.
Right.
Knowing hip hop, people were probably there like 11 o'clock. When you think about it, but that's the time that was on the flyer.
Right. So the sun's in Leo.
Absolutely. Sun's in Leo, moon is in Capricorn. I mean, right there, that spells entertainment business already, the business of entertainment. Just putting those particular things together, right? What fuels hip hop is that creative expression, which, the sun in any chart is about the particular type of fuel that's needed to be able to make that engine go, so to speak. So the engine of hip hop is definitely fueled by creative self-expression, by making oneself distinct also.
Right. And so with Pisces as the ascendant, Jupiter's ruling the chart.
Absolutely. So big, more,
Yeah.
everything, even excess, so to speak, which can be also considered to be a challenging aspect of hip hop. I mean, because one, I think for the Pisces rising, I would say that the positive part of that would be the inclusive aspect, right? The universal aspect. Irrespective of everything, hip hop has pretty much touched everything in this world, right? It has a very universal feel to it, right? And it's inclusive, right? There's not anyone that can't be involved in hip hop, right? It was never a thing to keep people out. It was always something to unify other people.
Yeah, it was the media, and the pressure came from outside. Within there's no pressure at all to exclude. So anything else about this chart that you find interesting? Jupiter's ruling the midheaven in Sagittarius in Aquarius.
Right. Well, number one, the sun and Mercury, which it's common that Mercury is in the same sign as the sun, but that just even adds more to it in terms of the verbal expression when it comes to hip hop, because there can be very braggadocious. But when you step up to that mic, which would be Mercury, you better be confident in what it is that you're saying.
Right.
That's exactly it. There is a definite requirement that you're confident in what it is that you're speaking of. We have the Capricorn moon here, right? Also, which suggests this emotional need to have some kind of structure or some kind of business or something that surrounds hip hop. And that Mercury it's widely opposing Jupiter, I would say. So I would say that accentuates even more in terms of braggadocious rhymes, being able to accentuate things, heighten confidence, right? Or like like the ostentations. I've got more of this than you, right? I've got more of that than you, right? So, and also just let's say the subject matter where hip hop is concerned, broad subject matter, wide ranging subject matter, which would be Mercury and Jupiter in contact with one another.
Right. And Mars squaring Mercury and the moon, and you could argue that those three are really integral to hip hop, the moon, Mercury, and Mars, the idea of, as you were just explaining.
And that degree of Mars, right?
Right.
We talked about, Mars is competition, right? If you're going to step into the ring, but then you also talk about violence as well, right?
In its own sign of Aries.
Yeah, absolutely. So battling, which is definitely a thing, in hip hop, but also we've had some very unfortunate incidents, as we all know, about people that have been lost to the hands of violence where hip hop is concerned as well.
Sure.
And if you want to assign misogyny to Mars, we can do that too.
Right. Sure.
Right. And that is, and squaring that moon, right? Because it was not women in hip hop essentially had to come in a way that reflected battling just like a man, right? And so that's tension between Mars and that moon, right? It's like, well, I can't really be myself here necessarily, but so I have to come in to be taken seriously. Right. I have to be like this. So, yeah, there's a lot there in that chart.
Fantastic. Yeah, I like that a lot. That's really interesting. Okay, yeah. So, rappers born under the sign of Cancer. So you've got Missy Elliott, Lil Kim, talking about women in hip hop.
Right.
RZA, who's kind of the leader of the Wu-Tang Clan.
Right.
And Guru. Okay, and you want to talk about Guru's chart, I think.
Yes. His birthday is 2 days from now, as a matter of fact.
Right.
Oh, and Tony Touch, who's a DJ, he's also a Cancer as well.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. So he's Sun in Cancer, Moon, Mars, and Pluto in Virgo, which is interesting. Sun opposite Saturn in Cancer. He has that kind of Saturnian feeling about him, doesn't he? Like he's carrying a lot.
Absolutely. And it's interesting that he has the Sun opposing Saturn. And if you didn't know, his father was a judge.
Really?
Yes.
I didn't know.
Yes.
Okay. And anybody watching who doesn't know who Guru is, he was the leader of Gang Starr, who came out of Boston originally. I think they recorded in New York from '88, more or less. And I remember that debut album actually was a bit of a sleeper at first. And then people were really like, wow, this is something different. This is something. What was different about Guru for you?
Well, I think that number one, with this chart, it's ruled by Venus, right? And it's interesting that Venus is in Gemini in the 9th house, because what people don't know, gifted, unlimited rhymes universal, right? That's what Guru stands for, right? And so you've got that Venus in Gemini in the 9th house, which could be arguably the most universal house in the chart, right? I think that he was able to envelop and say things in a certain way that other people could say but be taken differently, right? Because with that Mercury there in Cancer, as well as the Sun, right? I think that he was able to elicit a certain emotional response with his rhymes, and did not necessarily have a problem rhyming about things that even affected him emotionally. Right. And I think I saw that as the evolution of Gang Starr happened for him. It's interesting that, you talk about that Sun and Saturn and the Libra rising. the title of the first album was No More Mr. Nice Guy.
Right.
that was the Gangstar's first album. But
So my sun in Cancer, Mr. Nice Guy. Saturn is saying no more Mr. Nice Guy.
right, and so he he actually graduated from Morehouse College with a degree in business administration. Also, he was very much into studying different systems of thought, which is reflective of his music and also of that Venus and Gemini there in the ninth house, a Mercury ruled ninth house. That is finding enjoyment in diversity, in systems of thought, of religion, of things that have to do with higher learning and knowledge, but the enjoyment of crafting a specific worldview for yourself, right? And so the way that he was coming to you in his rhymes was painting a picture, right? Which was being able to put that worldview out to you.
I mean, a lot of rappers are talking about stuff that they're involved in, or they're talking from the persona of someone on the street. Whereas Guru was kind of commentating on that. You got the tracks like Just to Get a Rep, which is an amazing track, where he's saying this is this kid's story, but this is where his story coming from.
Right.
He was kind of painting a picture of the background of people that as when I was listening to it, I was like blown away when that stuff came out.
Right. I mean, just it's you get caught up in the story, right? But I feel like that's because it's having that emotional effect on you. Like there's Gangstar X girl to the next girl, right? He's talking about his experiences, or commentating on experiences with women, right? But you're getting caught up in his description of things, and I believe that's part of Mercury in Cancer, right? A Mercury in a water sign, the more vivid imagery that can be displayed through verbal articulation. And I think that was definitely a gift of his to be able to paint those stories, and you actually felt the music, not only heard what he was saying, but you felt it.
Right. And then of course if you're crediting Guru, you have to credit also DJ Premier.
Absolutely.
Who was the producer DJ with Gangstar. And they were finally at odds when the band split up, but like Premier's a Aries.
Sure. Right.
And Guru's a Cancer. So we can kind of see that conflict there in the end in their relationship. But this is a tremendous partnership, musically speaking.
Right, absolutely. That combination, right? Not only do squares, which Aries and Cancer naturally square one another. We're taught in our beginning studies in astrology that squares are bad, right? Conjunctions, or trines are good. Squares are bad, right? But actually, there can be a tremendous that in relationships, right? To keep that tension going, right? That creative tension going, that can fuel so much creativity. I mean, you look at Premier up here, and you already see that that Guru's Mercury was squaring his Mercury square Mercury, Sun square Mercury, Mars square and Mercury, right? Between the two of them, right?
So we can see here the Sun Mars at the beginning of Aries, Sun Mars at the beginning of Aries for Premier, and then Guru's Mercury. Wow.
Yeah, exactly.
Wearing that Mars.
Exactly. And one of the things, and I've heard Premier talk about it, not necessarily in relation to Guru, but just looking at Premier's chart in general, anything zero cardinal is known as the Aries point. So the Aries point would suggest you having your distinct relationship with the world through those qualities, right? And Premier having two planets, right, at that point. mentioning like where he would hear other producers. I remember a Drink Champs podcast that Noriega hosts with Pete Rock and Premier were both on the podcast. And one of the things he was talking about is when he would hear some producer have one beat, he would say to himself, "Oh no, right? I have to, I have to outdo that, or I have to, it's that internal competition, right? When it comes to producers."
Mm-hmm.
And he was heavily involved in that, right? When producers say to each other, when I heard this, I said, "Oh no, I've got to be able to top this and do something else."
Fantastic.
And I feel that that's what really helped and has kept his fire, burning all these years.
Okay, so we're talking a lot about the kind of what would have been the new school rappers of the 80s and early 90s, but hip hop's changed a lot in that time, and today we're in the kind of trap era. Is there anything from today's music that excites you?
What excites me is people that I like making music that are still making music. But you know what I'll say is that it's exciting to see some people collaborating with, newer people collaborating with older established artists.
Mm-hmm.
Right? That it makes me happy to see that. Right?
Mm-hmm.
It makes me happy to see that DMX made a song with Griselda before he passed away.
Right.
Right? Yeah, that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Because you can tell, I mean, there's still newer artists that have that influence, right? That grew up, listening to these artists. So those are typically the artists that I tend to enjoy.
But it's interesting because your business as an astrologer started around the time Pluto came into Capricorn, right?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
This is exactly the time when trap came in to the sort of hip hop scene around that
Right.
time. So I'm wondering if things are going to change for trap in when Pluto moves out of Capricorn into Aquarius.
Well, I think and like I said, the hip hop is from a listener standpoint, that my Cancer moon is very active, right? I'm very much in another time period.
Right.
But from a thinker's and a sociological standpoint and everything like that, to follow the evolution of hip hop and where it's gone is a very interesting process. And like you said, wondering if it's going to, I think a lot of it depends on money, because still with the moon in Capricorn in hip hop's chart, and Capricorn being a bottom line sign, someone is saying, what can we monetize on? Right now, this is what they can monetize on.
Yeah, I remember when I was young, in the 70s, 80s, musicians had no idea how to maximize their money making. They just didn't have an idea. Hip hop seems to put out so many people that have just gone like, okay, I'm going to turn this into a business.
Right. Well, you know what? And I think, and this is what I will say about this time in hip hop too, is that I think for the middle person, right, the working person, it has created a lane for that person to do what they love and concentrate on the music, right? You were either on or you weren't back then, right? You either had the record deal or you were chasing it, but there was no independent lane in between. Everybody was going up to labels, shopping demos, trying to rap for executives and everything else.
Yeah.
But there was a lane that was created that said, I don't have to sign to a major label. Yeah. I can still spend my money and put my music out and still be fulfilled and happy by the product that I'm putting out. And I think it's created.
Chance the Rapper is one of the forerunners in this, is actually just creating a huge market share with no record deal. This is something I admire enormously. Like an artist that can just say, okay, I'm not going to take that huge advance I'm being offered.
Sure.
I'm just gonna do it my way.
And you can look at Pluto and Capricorn as the obliteration of those structures, right? Because Pluto coming in contact with things tends to destroy or transform them significantly.
Okay, fantastic. All right. So what's going on for you this summer? Tell me what's happening for you generally in the astrology world.
Uh, a lot of clients, which I'm thankful for. A lot of clients. I teach astrology classes. I teach, basic astrology classes,
Right.
which are or up to intermediate, I would say.
Right.
It's hard to really classify because I feel like that's where I am, because astrology is so vast. It's hard for you to say that like I'm an expert on astrology or something because it's never ending. But I teach students that have an interest, a general interest in astrology.
Mm.
I'm working on more projects for myself. Some of them are hip hop related also because there's been articles that I've half written articles here that I've wanted to finish and wanted to write. I wrote an article on Illmatic, right? It is interesting that both hip hop have that high degree Mars, and so does Illmatic. I believe Illmatic has a 29 degree Mars, right? That's the height of competition, right? That album, right? I wrote an article on just on the date it came out. I used 10 a.m. as the birth date because me going to the record store, that's when the record store opened up, when you were able to actually buy the album, on the album release day, right? Mm-hmm. So there's going to be more of that because there are albums that I feel like need to be covered, right? There are classic hip hop albums that I think the Cosmos had something to say at that particular time, right? About why that album came out at that particular time.
Yeah, I mean, people look upon the golden age of the 90s in some way now, with all the things like Tribe Called Quest, the Roots, all that sort of jazz influenced hip hop coming in, giving it that sort of deeper sound, broadening it out from what it had been before. But me, I always into new music. I listen to music all the time. Like right now, I'm hearing stuff I really love. It never stops me. But I don't think hip hop is as rich right now as it was at that time.
Sure, you just brought up Tribe Called Quest. Since I'm into those charts, Midnight Marauders and 36 Chambers came out on the same day.
Wow.
We don't have days like that anymore. It was November 9th, 1993, right? You go to the record store, you're getting both of those, right? Like I can come out empty-handed, not like now, but just the fact that on that day those two classic albums came out together.
Incredible. They're a Scorpio, both of them.
Yes. Which Midnight Marauders, which which I have a half-written article here, but that's part of it, right? To maraud at midnight is definitely scorpionic.
Right. Right. I'm planning to do at some point a top 10, a personal top 10 kind of DJ session, like a radio show type thing, with what I think are the 10 best songs that reference this astrology in the lyrics. So I've got things like Swam and I by Outkast, stuff like that I really love.
Yeah.
Not just hip hop stuff, but a lot of hip hop stuff.
And I tried to do it on a blog that I had. I tried to do it, but then there's a lot, and there's more now. That's the thing. Like I said, I'm so behind. When I look back at that, this is referencing what I'm referencing are songs like way back, right?
Have you heard a track by the Whispers called Planets of Life?
No, I have not.
Okay. That's my number one, just as a giveaway. Yeah. It's like a funk disco track from 73. And they do this kind of like all the Leos, all the Scorpios in the middle of it. But he really goes deep with it in the song.
Yeah,
I absolutely love this. Yeah. And I've discovered some other stuff like Al Green. There's a song by Al Green called "I'm a Ram," and it doesn't say anything about Aries in the lyrics, but like he's an Aries.
Right. Well, you know, in some of the vinyl that I have, you know, which is interesting, you know, in the sleeves, right? They'll have an entire, who was it? It was the Spinners or somebody. They have some vinyl, you know, they have an entire profile. Like it's like the person in the band, and then zodiac sign and all this stuff. You know, it's that stuff. There's some rich stuff in there in those vinyl sleeves.
You shared something recently from like old magazines in the early 70s on your Twitter. You were
Yeah. I collect like old vintage, like Ebony and Jet magazines and everything. They've had you know, articles from you know, astrologers in there, or like interviewing celebrities about astrology. You know, which I didn't know. It's interesting to know that some of the people like Roberta Flack and like, you know, other people were like, you know, Earth, Wind and Fire had their own personal astrologer named James Black.
Wow.
Right? Maurice White, Sagittarius, by the way, you know,
Yeah.
Maurice White was very much into astrology, and they used charts. I have a Old Jet magazine where the title says like Earth, Wind and Fire uses birth charts for a group success.
It's amazing how many of those like soul and funk acts from the early 70s have tracks with astrology references. You know,
Right.
like Curtis Mayfield, Al Green. You go through and you always find one in there.
And even from what I understand, Jimi Hendrix was into astrology. You know, Cancer Sun. I mean, Sad Sun, Cancer Moon.
Right.
Right.
Yeah. Cool. Okay, I'm not going to keep you any longer, Jason. I want to thank you so much for joining me. It's been really interesting. I've had a lot of fun.
Absolutely. I really appreciate you having me on, and I'm sorry that it took this long to get everything coordinated.
No, it's cool. Cool. So have a great summer. Wish you the best of luck, and hopefully see you again sometime. Sometimes I get to America, maybe one day I can meet you in person. That would be great.
Oh, absolutely.
All right. Take care, man.
All right. Hey, thank you.
Thanks. Bye-bye.